probably. I don't want to. I don't want it to get too late. Amber says schmoozing is over. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. I again have to say this sounds very much like a synagogue. There's schmoozing. I know that we are all very excited and eager to hear from Frank. So I'm gonna get us started. I have a couple of words to share, and then I'm gonna turn it to you, Frank. When I meet someone for the first time, I deliberately don't read up on them before we meet. It's just something I like to deliberately not do, and unless it's somehow essential to the meeting itself, I don't like to pry ahead of time and find out if someone is a doctor. Oh, let there be light. I don't like to pry ahead of time and find out if someone is a doctor, despite, again, it being a Jewish community. So it can often be a given. Anyway. Or that they toured with a band. I don't need to know the details of their high school. I don't want that to color my meeting with them. Instead, I like to meet people where they are at in that moment. Talk to them about what they would like to tell me about. I've known some people and well for years before finding out what their profession is or what city they grew up in and that I might also love, and I'm proud of that. I like it because it helps us relate as human beings to one another. I don't need the backdrop of a resume, mine or theirs, to get in the way of two people simply getting to know one another. So when I first met Frank, I didn't ask about his job, we just chatted. And over the course of the weeks and months and now years, I really came to enjoy not only the sharp smile and banter, but the insights that he brought to our conversations, especially around Torah, which I do know that we both love. But when you study Torah with someone, more than just the text comes out in conversation, you start to hear the way each of us understands our own story in the story of our people. And so I started learning a detail here and there that Frank would share with the group about a personal history that is quite remarkable. And then Frank started mentioning that he would be away from Torah study on such and such a date because he was speaking to a Jewish community. And it was only a short while before I turned to Frank and said, Frank, we're a Jewish community too. So I am honored and delighted that Frank is sharing his story with our community tonight and that he brings himself to our dear Jewish corner of California and enriches this congregation with every part of who he is, past, present, and many, many good years to come. Please join me in welcoming Frank Meeink.
Try to get me going. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's been a long life story just to get me here to say those words, you know? So before I get started, for one, the Talmud says you should always start out with a joke. All right, that's what it says, right, Rabbi? It's in the Talmud. It says you should always start out with a joke. So here's my first joke, followed by many more. My joke goes like this. At one time in my life, I believed because of the color of my skin, I was better than another human being on this planet. That's the joke. What a joke. And truly based my whole life upon that thought process. So I'm going to give you a little bit. We'll do question and answers afterwards. As a group of Jewish people, I'm sure there's going to be some questions and questioning of things. It's the tribe, it's what we do. But before we get there, I'm going to break down a little bit about where I come from, how I got there, give you some of the meat and potatoes of the story. But before we get into the whole thought process, we got to talk about my favorite subject, me. That's right, me. I'm not much, but I'm all I think about, and I hope you come along with me on this journey. So, but just to tell you where I come from. So I was born and raised to two drug addict alcoholics in Philly. in a rough part of Philly. My mom liked the bad boy. This is the 70s. What was the bad boy? My mom's from an Irish Catholic neighborhood. So who was the bad boys back then? The Rocky Balboas, right? And my dad was this little tough Italian drug dealer, tough guy from the streets of Philly, and my mom liked that. And so I came to be in this drug and alcohol-fueled relationship. I came out of it. Now, they didn't stick together. My mom moved back to the Irish Catholic neighborhood. And when she took me, I was first born with my father's last name, which is Bertolini. So my original name was Frankie Bertolini, and you don't get no more Italian than Frankie Bertolini. But when we moved back to the Irish neighborhood, they took my last name away. And now there's been stories about why, for insurance reasons, this and that. But what my story, I was always told, was that they took my last name away because they didn't want to raise, and this is slang for Italian, they didn't want to raise a Dego in an Irish neighborhood. All right? So I got Meeink, and Mink's not even Irish. As long as it wasn't Italian, was cool. So my mom has boyfriends off and on. Get through this part pretty quick. My mom winds up marrying a guy who was in the local neighborhood, alcoholic, drug addict, who liked to put his hands on me, and he hated me from get-go, just the way it was. I was about 8 or 9 when he started coming around, and he hated Italians, and so he used to always talk about how he was going to beat the Italian out of me, and he tried, and he tried. I'll put it to you this way. I hated that home so much. And this is not to give you a sob story, just an explanation. When I used to walk home from school, because in South Philly, the schools are only, it's little row homes and row streets, and our schools are right there. I mean, it's 2 blocks from my mom's house to my school. And I would get to the last block, I used to always wish to get hit by a car. And I don't want to die. I didn't want to go home. And if I got hit by a car, now look, everyone in South Philly gets hit by cars. Those little small narrow streets, it's a thing to do. And it's always by your cousins, because we're all related. It's like Chabad. Everyone's related. We all know each other. We all come up with each other. And so it's your second cousin, third cousin, marriage. So when you get run over, you can't even do anything other than get run over by the car, but you might get to a hospital. Now, I'm the one kid. I want to get hit by a car. But I'm like this naturally athletic kid. I was blessed with the most unattractive legs. I'm super bow-legged, and I just can move, and was always an athlete. And when that car would come to hit me, because I would plan it. I would plan a small car. Don't get me wrong, I'm not stupid. I wanted a small car, something that was not going to kill me, So I would wait for, back then it was a Yugo. If you guys remember, I was the car. I was like, if a Yugo hit me, I might hurt it, So anyway, I would go out in front of the car, and as soon as it would get close enough, my brain would go, get out of the way. And I would just get out of the way every time. So I'm the only kid that never been hit by a car. So eventually my stepdad beats me and tells me he's going to make me move with my real dad. My real dad lives up in a different section of Philly, an even worse section of Philly, so southwest West Philly. Some of you guys might have heard of West Philly. There's a whole Fresh Prince came from there. West Philly, born and raised on the playground where I spent most of my days, chilling out, maxing, relaxing, shooting some b-ball out by the schoolyard. That's the neighborhood. He moved out of there and moved to Beverly Hills or Bel Air. I moved in. And I moved in my dad. My dad had a bar, a little tavern right by his house. My dad's never home. I get to grow up around this tavern, which was just the craziest place. It was nothing but roofers, longshoremen, and drug dealers. That's who hung out at the bar, right? And so I get to just run around this bar and do what all the guys do, and I looked up to those guys in those places, but my dad had to put me in a local school, so he puts me in this local school right by his house, which is an all-black school. So now I went from a diverse school, which was Irish, Italian, Puerto Rican, and black, to an all-black school. There was 20 of us, 20 white kids, not 20%, just 20 of us. All right, and it was rough. I was a new kid, middle of the school year. I was kind of a punk rock alternative kid anyway, and I was an athlete on top of that, which really got under people's skin. And it just wasn't an easy school for me to go to. I fist fought a lot, got jumped. I mean, it was a crazy school. And if any, it was a very easy school to remember. It's called Pepper Middle School, like salt and pepper. Pepper Middle School. If you ever Google it, it'll tell you the story of why they closed Pepper. They closed it 2 years after I was in that school, because it was so crazy at that school. So, tell you a real quick funny story. I start cutting school all the time. I'm like, I'm not going back to that school. I'll just, look, in Philadelphia, you don't graduate because of your grades. You graduate by your age. You just age out like prison, so that's what's funny when people are always like, hey, do you know Hebrew now? And I'm like, Hebrew? I barely know English. I went to Philadelphia Public School. Are you kidding me? Water, I say water. So anyhow, I start cutting school, and what I used to do is I would take the trolley down in the center city Philly, which is very historical. And I used to sneak into Ben Franklin's house. Ben Franklin there's the Franklin Museum and there's the Ben Franklin's House Museum. And I used to sit outside the Ben Franklin House Museum. And since it was during school hours, school kids would be coming out the back door. And what I would always do is I would wait. And when they come out the back door, I sneak in and I would sit in there all day and I'd go do all the exhibits. I could tell you everything about Ben Franklin. He was an amazing dude. He was an amazing guy, right? And so I would see all the exhibits. And well, anyway, I went back to school for a brief moment later on, and I remember my teacher goes, hey, we're gonna go to Ben Franklin's house. So I'm bragging to all my friends. I'm like, yo, I sneak in there. I'm gonna show you everything. I know all the exhibits. I keep saying, I sneak in there. It's great. So I go there for the first time on a school trip, and I go through the front door. Never been through the front door. Big sign, front of the door, free admissions. That place was worthless after that. I was like, this is so dumb. Up until that point, I was so cool because I was stealing it. I was stealing the knowledge. If I was stealing knowledge, I'm down. When it was free, I'm like, come on now. So that's the story of my life. So eventually, I just got sick of that school, and the summer was coming along, and they graduated me. I missed like the last 40 days of school, and they graduated me. And my dad, who really has nothing to do with my life, he just doesn't. He's been remarried. He's got some other kids around, and I'm just this older kid from a mistake. And I mean, I knew this. I knew this as a kid. My parents were just two drug, I was just this one-night flingy thing that happened and got out of control. So my uncle said I can go up to his house up in the Bucks County, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania area. They were South Philly. They were my mom's side of the family. They moved up to the farms. They took the kids out of the city. They were doing good. And anyhow, if any of you know that area, it's all Amish, right? So my uncle lives on this long road, and it's either Amish or Mennonites. And Mennonites are like, kind of like, I don't know, the reformed of the Amish. You know what I mean? They're like, we kind of do some stuff, but we're not down with everything. You know what I mean? So, but most of them are Amish. And so I would see these horse and buggies, and I was fat. Like they didn't. We're in Philly. I seen the reenactors of the signing the Declaration of Independence. I seen the reenactors. These Amish people weren't reenacting because I was there. They really are on horse and buggies, and that was National Geographics, And I loved it up there. And my cousin, who's a couple years older than me, got me into skateboarding this summer before and into punk rock music. Couldn't wait to hang out with him. And I get up into his room as soon as my uncle brought me up there, and my cousin wasn't home yet. And I walk into his room, and he has like a swastika on his wall. And he had like newspaper articles about neo-Nazi skinheads on his like wallpaper to his wall. And I didn't know what that was. I didn't know. I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you, when I seen all this stuff, I was like, what's the word neo mean? I thought it meant like neon, right? So I had no idea what neo meant. And for any of you who don't know, it just means new. It's a new Nazi. So my cousin comes home and he's shaved bald, looks different than he did the year before. The year before he was punk rock, and I remember like there was pictures of Hitler around and Confederate flags. And so I learned like that's the bad guy. Right? I mean, my grandfathers were all in the military and fought in and around the big wars. And I watched Gomer's Pile when I was in McHale's Navy. So this is the bad guy. And my cousin's like, no, he just lost the war. He's like, he was a white warrior. He was for the white race. And I'm like, never heard that take. So then, that night, all these other neo-Nazis used to come up. And they used to come over to my cousin's house. My aunt and uncle, and I want to point this out, my aunt and uncle are good people. They just seen their son going through phases. He hated that they took him out of the city. And so they let him go through his phases. So he went through punk rock stuff one year. Who knows, So they just let him roll with it. Who's he going to offend up there? It's all Amish and other white people. You know what I mean? So it's not like you're going to offend anybody. And so when these other neo-Nazis would come over, they would start talking about race and racism, or, talk about black people and this and that. And I remember my cousin kind of pointing out to them, he's like, yo, you just don't understand, like, you just can say all this stuff, but my cousin lives in one of the worst neighborhoods in Philly. So these people would start asking me, like, what's it like? Do you really take the train with black people? And they wouldn't say black, they would say the other word. But they would say, you really take the train with them? And I'm like, yeah. I live in West Philly. Yeah, I take the O train it's all black people, And so they would say these things to me. And what happened to me was I felt like the black encyclopedia. Like they came and they talked to me about this stuff. And look, I could tell you right now, I can come home, when I was a kid and I came home with a black eye or a trophy, my parents, neither parent or step-parent, would say, how'd you get that thing, Frank? How'd you get that black eye? How'd you get that trophy? They didn't have that. It's not my parents' parenting style to do that. So someone asking me, what's it like being around black people, was someone saying, how's your day? How's your life? And it sucks. So I want to talk with these people. This feels good. I feel wanted. I feel like I belong. I just felt it. I loved it. So now we start going to concerts together, and they start bringing me with them. I'm not into the group yet. I'm just hanging around with all these bigger guys, these tattooed, they drive cars, they have girls, they had beer. They were cool. They listened to music that I liked, I started liking. And so when they would go to these concert halls, all these other neo-Nazis would show up. And I don't know them. I only know this little group, but they all know each other. So my cousin would have to say to him, like, hey, this is my little cousin. Let's watch out for him tonight in the nightclub, in the punk rock show. Okay. And we'd go in these clubs, and I'm telling you, people would come in, and all these neo-Nazis would hang out together. And when the doors of the nightclub would let in, and people would come walking in, you would see people look over us and not come near us. And I could see the look of fear. People feared these guys. I love that. Up until that point in my life, I fear everything. I might be a 14-year-old tough kind of city kid, but deep down inside, I stopped growing once my stepdad moved in, mentally. And I feared everything in my life. I feared my parents and their neglect. I feared my step-parents and their abuse, especially my stepdad. I feared my school. I feared if I was going to have enough food to eat some days. Now someone fears me because I'm with these guys. I like it. I love it. So now one night we're at after this concert hall, these guys asked me if I would shave my head in front of the other guys. What am I going to say? No. And I wanted to belong. So I said, yeah, let's do this. I got the black and white issue down. I'm fighting with Puerto Rican kids. I'm fighting with black kids. I'm fighting with Italian kids too, but we'll cut that part out. Whatever fits the narrative. So now I have to go to my first little rally. Now, look, where I grew up, neighborhood racism is the way you breathe. We all talk bad about the other neighborhoods. They do it about us. It's a thing to do. If anyone's from the East Coast, we talk bad about the Italians. We talk bad about the Puerto Ricans. They talk bad about the Irish. We give them plenty of ammunition to talk bad about us about. But the one thing I could tell you is that I didn't know any Jewish people in my neighborhood. I didn't know there were Jewish people in my neighborhood. Funny enough, I just didn't. And what happened was, I remember when I was a kid, and say if you picked up a penny on our street, people, what are you, a Jew? Ha ha ha, picking up pennies. Or if you came back from the store and Johnny didn't give you the right change from the store, they say, oh, Johnny's always trying to Jew somebody. And everybody laugh. And as a kid, I was like, I remember asking my uncle, I was probably about 10, this is before my neo-Nazi years, I remember my uncle saying about Johnny Jewed him, and everyone laughed, and I said, well, why is that funny? And he said, oh, well, see, Frank, and he starts to explain to me as a 10-year-old. He goes, oh, see, Frank, the Jews, they're notorious for money. And then he stopped himself, and he goes, you know what? You'll get the joke when you're older. You'll get the joke when you're older. When I go to my first real neo-Nazi rally gathering, the guy who comes up, and just so you know, the groups that I join are Christian, they were Christian identity groups. They preach how to hate through Christianity. Anyhow, I remember this minister guy, he says he was a minister. I don't know where he got his doctrine, but that's what he says. But I remember he starts talking about the Jews. And he says, the Jews secretly funnel money from the Federal Reserve. Now look, I'm 14. I just turned 51 yesterday. I still don't know what the Federal Reserve does. I just know it's bad news. And when these guys are telling me that the Federal Reserve, they're secretly funneling money from the Federal Reserve, as he's talking in that thing, I said, oh, I get my uncle's joke. I must be older. I want to be older. I want to know what the adults know. They left me to fend for myself. I want to know what they know. So I'm in, like, wow, these people are unlocking something for me. So from that point on, I never went back to school. My parents kicked me out right away. Both my parents, again, that was their opportunity to get rid of me. So neither parent wanted me in the house. You know, I come back from the New Jersey, this trip up in Lancaster, the Bucks County area, shaved head, you know, talking all this neo-Nazi stuff. And both my parents were like, they had new families and new babies and all this and other kids, and there's like too much trouble. So I just started living with neo-Nazis all over the country. I just had this opportunity. I would live with different groups here, and then I would get shipped over here. And I got good at what I was doing. I got really good at speaking this stuff. I became like a pundit. Like I just had this natural gift. You know, you can use gifts good or bad. And what I was doing, and a pundit is like, and I'm not trying to talk bad about him, but we could if we want. Sean Hannity is a good pundit. He's a great pundit. What pundits do is that we read things, and I don't read things to find knowledge. I only read things for ammunition in an argument and debate, right? So I could read, math scores in America are down. It's because of the Jews, you know? And I'll figure out a way to make that argument go that way. And then I would always, since I would go back in and out of Philly, and most of the guys I ran with were like suburban guys. There was a couple of Philly guys that we had, but most of the guys were like suburban guys. But I was a city kid, so I was still running around like through the projects. And so when the black Israelites would come and talk, or some of the black supremacist groups, or whatever groups you want to call them, and they would always sit out and preach, I used to love going and debating with them. And I'm like this little 15-year-old. And they knew I was a city kid. In Philly, if you say the word John, you know you're from the city. Like it's one of our words in Philly, is John. I don't know if you ever know that, but if you ever go to Philly, you use the word John, they're going to think you're a local. So I would debate with these guys, and these black activists would always give this talks and very inspirational and talk about how horrible it is. And there was hard things they would talk about, but then they would talk about how all white people basically have a silver spoon. And I would say, no, you don't know my story. I don't have no silver spoon. And these black guys would say, okay, they would respect that I would talk with them like this, and then they'd always say to me, these black activists would say, Frank, we're not saying that you had it easy, but if you were black, you would have had it harder. That's all we're saying. And I'm, no. You just don't know. You don't know. And I got really good at that, and I started getting put on all these TV shows for the neo-Nazis. And if you ever look back, there's a bunch of old TV shows. The neo-Nazis used to throw me out there and be like, go ahead, Frank, you go talk. And I'd go talk. Or if any media was coming around, I'd be like, Frank, you go talk. And I go talk. And I started making a name for myself in the movement. And by that time, I had a big swastika on my neck, and I had a tattoo up here, and I got the swastika taken off, obviously. But I have a tattoo, it's still up here, and it's on top of my head. It says, Made in Philly. I got that when I was 15 years old. It says, Made in Philly, because that's where my parents, it's where it happened, right? It's where it happened, so it's not a lie, it's true. It says Made in Philly. And so I got known as the Made in Philly guy throughout the movement. And I'm traveling to different compounds. I'm going out to Indianapolis, Virginia Beach. I'm just getting transferred around. Guys are taking me in. Because everywhere I go, I would make the group bigger. I was really good at doing that. I had this thing. And I wound up making my way out to Springfield, Illinois. And when I get out to Springfield, Illinois, and I got to tell you guys, I usually say this for the end, but I just want to back it up right now. I was so radicalized. I'm telling you, all we talked about was the race war. Every house and every safe house and every compound I go to, that's all we talked about was the race war. And I'm telling you, if they would have said, hey, Frank, we have a truck outside, a U-Haul truck. We need a federal building blown up because that's what we were talked about all the time. They said, here, we're going to give you the keys. Will you take it? I would have said, absolutely. Absolutely, I would take that truck. That's where I was. So anyhow, I wound up going out to Springfield, Illinois. Springfield, Illinois was this very civil rights-y kind of feel of a town. It's where Abraham Lincoln, it's not where he's born, but they kind of claim he was born there, but it's not true, by the way. But anyway, but everything's Abraham Lincoln. And it's also one of the spots where the NAACP was founded. So it has this really civil rights feel, and I'm starting to recruit kids out of the high schools there. Now, it sounds a little creepy me saying that right now, but I was 16 years old. I was 17, going on 17 years old. So I fit right in, and I have all these tattoos, and the kids I'm recruiting out of the high school aren't going to get messed with anymore if they're hanging out with a guy like me. So more and more, so I got my own cable access television show, like a racist Wayne's World. It was called The Reich, and we had to put on the local cable access channel, which for any younger people that don't know, cable access was like the podcast of the times. And we had our own show, and it was called The Reich, and people wrote about it, and people watched it, and people put it on, and we had other neo-Nazi groups sending us their shows, and we would put it on our network, which was at Lincoln Land Community College. I told you, everything's Lincoln. Lincoln Land Community College was where the TV station was. So these other neo-Nazi shows were like these older white guys, you know, and they would just sit around and talk about their beliefs, which I believed. But their shows were so boring. You know, it's just these old white dudes talking about their beliefs. And I'm like, this sucks. I said, let's make something different. So we made our show, and we had all these little skits and comedy skits and music, and we made it interactive, like a racist Wayne's World. So, you know, I haven't brought up all the violence, but everywhere I'm going, there's violence. There's a lot of guns. There's a lot of stolen guns. There's a lot of transferring of guns. There's a lot of talking about homicides, killings, and we fight. And you guys all have heard these groups, and I'm sure in today's world you hear differently. But the group Antifa, they're our arch enemy. They are our biggest rival. Everywhere we go, we battle with them. Everywhere we go, they would dox us. And if we were going to do something big, say if we were going to come do something to a synagogue, we knew we had to take care of them first, because if we did anything, they were going to dox us or come after us. So everywhere we go, we'd had all these battles and wars and killings and murders, and it was what happened. And they were my nemesis everywhere I would go. So in Springfield, there was this one guy who was Antifa. He was, again, it's not really a group. It's not. It's a bunch of hundreds of other little groups that make up an ideology is what they are. So there was a guy part of a group called ARA, Anti-Racist Action. And he was also part of another group. But anyway, it don't matter. And when I got there, all these new kids I was recruiting, they all knew this guy because they kind of came up skateboarding together. So I didn't like that they liked him. I'm like, no, guys, we're fighting these guys all over the country. Like, he ain't cool with us. And they're like, no, he's cool. So my job, because again, by the way, I want to point this out real quick, just so you understand something. The whole time, I'm an active alcoholic. And that's not an excuse. Again, it's an explanation, because alcoholism is really different than what people think if you don't have it. So, anyhow, when you're an alcoholic like me, if you're my enemy, I don't just not like you, I have to build alliances of people that don't like you. And that's what I was doing with this guy. And eventually I got everyone to not like the guy. And I invited him over, and we kidnapped him. And we held them for ransom. And nobody would pay the ransom. So we got stuck with the guy. Now, I just want to let you all know this. I've actually made amends with that man. We're cool now. So just years and years later, I ran into him again and made an amends. But nobody paid the ransom, and I got stuck with the guy. So we let him go, and we didn't harm him anymore. We just figured we let him go. And he went to the cops, and the cops wanted to get me. And freedom of speech is great, but like, they knew this neo-Nazi was in their town causing all this trouble with the TV show, and they know I'm not a local because I advertise it on my head that I'm not a local, right? You're like, this dude's a troublemaker. So they arrest me for the kidnapping. And when they arrested me at 17 years old, they said, you know what? There was firearms involved, there was a bunch of stuff involved, and they said, you're charged as an adult. No more juvie stuff for you. Probably, I still weigh. It was Hashem's plan anyway, I guess, because when I got charged as an adult, they put me in the maximum. It was a huge county jail. The county. When I say county jail, people sometimes think of Mayberry. This was no Mayberry. This was this huge county jail with different cell blocks, like 15 other cell blocks. And the first thing they wanted to do was they put me in solitary confinement because of my age. They didn't know what else to do with me. So they put me in the cell block where there's people losing their minds. There's a lot of people that are going insane. There's people that scream all night. There's people that talk. And eventually, after a while, you will start talking to yourself. That's what's happening. That's when you hear people talking against solitary confinement, it's because of that. And it started happening to me. So about 4 months into this, I'm fighting my trial. I tell this story because what I used to do is, like you always hear the joke, where do you find God at? You find him in the county jail. That's where everyone else finds him. Because when you have a public defender, you need God. I don't know if you've ever had a public defender, but trust me, you need God as your co-lawyer. But what I would do is I would hold religious books whenever they'd give me. And I remember for a while, I'd hold the Bible shut, and I'd be like, yo, God, if you're real, I want you to let me find whatever is in this book that's going to help me with my court case, you know. And I dropped the book, and whatever it opened up to, I would read. So one day I get to reading about fasting. It says that if you fast, God will reveal himself to you, but you cannot brag or boast. You're like the guy praying on a street corner. You've already received your reward. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to fast. I'm not going to eat. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm going to take 3 days, I'm not going to eat, and now I just want to let you all know, I'm insane at the time. So what I'm doing is I'm fasting, and I'm like, yo, God, if you're real, at the end of this, I want you to pop my door, I want you to knock down that wall, and I want you to kill all these guards. Like, that's what I'm praying for. I'm insane at the time. I'm like, that's what I want. If you're real, you'll do this for me, right? So as the 3 days were going by, they're asking me, why am I not eating? Because I keep shutting my little door, my little latch to my thing so they can't slide the food through. Because I know if it comes to my cell, I'm going to eat it because I'm so hungry. So I would just shut the door so they couldn't feed me. And they said, are you refusing to eat? And I say, yeah, I'm refusing to eat. Okay. So after the third day, the warden, who was just the lieutenant of the police force there who ran the prison, the jail, he comes in and pulls me out of my cell. And he says, Mr. Meeink, why are you not eating? Now, again, my case is on the news all the time because I was the kidnapping guy with the TV show, with the neo-Nazi stuff. So my story is like always on the news. It was a high-profile case. So he's thinking that I might be trying to kill myself or I'm on a hunger strike. So he's asking me these things. Are you trying to do these things? And I'm like, no. He's like, well, what are you doing? And again, I'm like, well, I can't tell you. I can't tell you, but you better say goodbye to your fam tomorrow because some stuff's going down when this thing's over. You know, that's how I'm thinking. But I'm like, nothing. And he says, how about this, Mr. Meeink? If you eat tomorrow, I'll put you out in the they call it the H block, the honors block. It's where they put like guys who are waiting on big trials who don't want any trouble and aren't going to fight in the county jail. They call it the honors block. He's like, if you eat tomorrow, I'll put you out in the honors block. And I remember just like knowing that I was already going to eat anyway. So I was like, for you, warden? Sure. Gotcha. I'll eat for you tomorrow. I'm already going to eat. But I ate, and he took me into that new cell block. But I just got to tell you this because there was a moment, because I'm praying for extreme things to happen here. Like I want the seas to open up and let me out, right? Or at least give me a better lawyer. And as I was going from my new cell block, I had to gather all my stuff and put it in a little bin, and I'm pushing it, and I'm waiting for the door to open to go into this other cell block area, you know, and there was this moment that came over me where God just said to me, I'm not going to give you what you want because you're insane, but I'm going to give you what you need. And I walked onto this new cell block, and within 2 days, just to start off things, this black kid came over to me one day, and again, nobody wants to start trouble in the H blocks. We get free Kool-Aid all day long. That's like a big thing, right? You get free coffee and free Kool-Aid all day. The other cell blocks don't get that, so you want to be cool in there. And this black kid came over to me one day, and we were just talking, and he was young like I was. Again, I'm 17. He was about 17, and he asked me if I knew how to play spades, the card game. He's like, you know how to play spades? I was like, no, I don't know how to play. So let me show you. So he started showing me about how to play the card game spades. And then he started showing me hand signs and how to cheat. All right? He was showing me about how if you put his hand right here, you come back in diamonds. If he puts his fist down, that means come back in clubs. If he holds his cards over here, it means come back in hearts, because that meant he was cutting those suits. Or whatever, right? And he's like, let's play some people. So we play, and then we go play these older people, and we used to play for peanut butter and jellies. And yes, my wife who's here, my amazing wife, I'm addicted to peanut butter and jellies, along with my alcoholism. So we're playing for peanut butter and jellies, and we would play these old guys, and we would just cheat all the time. And we'd have stacks of peanut butter and jellies, right? And that's all I wanted, right? So it's cool. And look, I'm about to do my trials coming up. They now have, we made a video of the kidnapping. The police now have that, and it's now going to go in front of a jury, and I have a big swastika on my neck. So how's it going to be like, that's not me? You know what I mean? You got me mistaken, right? So I wound up plea bargaining, and they gave me 3 to 5 years upstate prison. And I was not even 18 yet. I turned 18 in the upstate prison. And just to tell you that they were not playing with me, some of you all know this person. I was in the same prison with John Wayne Gacy, who's a serial killer who dressed like a clown and did a lot of horrible things to 17, 18, 19-year-old boys, how old I am. Now, I'm going to tell you guys right away, and I'm just going to break this down for you real quick. I didn't fear anything in prison. And I wasn't because I was a tough guy. It was because all the Aryan gangs knew I was the TV show guy, and I was like a little celebrity. I really was. And I'll tell you, as soon as I got up in the prison, all the Aryan guys were like, we got you, we know who you are. I knew all the literature. I knew all the literature. A lot of these were just Aryans and biker guys who get into prison and see they're outnumbered, and they're like, whoa, I better join something. Now, I'm coming in with the swastika on the neck, preaching all this stuff, talking about this, talking about that. Real quick, a funny story, not so funny, but funny story is, in prison there are men who dress like women. That's just their lives. They call them the queens, and there was this queen, and there were black queens and white queens, and they ran together. They had their own little cliques, and I walk on my cell block one day, and I cut my hair back, and this bigger black queen comes walking back. I was going up steps, and she was coming down steps, and she was big, so she was even bigger because I'm coming up at her, right? So she stops me, and she says, what's that say on your head? I said, oh, it says made in Philly. I'm from South Philly. She goes, I'm from Southside Chicago. I was like, wow, what a coincidence. Good for you. You know what I mean? And I walked away. So later on that day, I'm out with all the Aryans, and the Aryans are all sitting in front of me, and we're sitting on this like baseball bleachers, and my chief of my gang, Dalton, is introducing me to everybody, because now everyone wants to know the skinhead with the TV show. So all these guys, and they're all trying to impress me. Just as weird as it sounds, they're all trying to show me how racist they are and how deep they know this literature and da-da-da-da. But at that time, the queen on the other side of this walk track, there was a fence between us. I was like leaning on a fence, and there was a walk track. And the queen goes walking by me, and I don't see her or hear her or nothing until I hear her go, hey, hey. So I'm like, turn, and she's with another queen, and she's tapping the other queen, and now I turn away from all the guys who are sitting like you are, and so I turn to look at them, and as I look at them, she goes, he's cute, isn't he? I told you he's cute, isn't he? And now, she was just doing that to me to pay me back for me being rude to her. She was like, all right, you want to be rude to me? I'll be rude back to you. You know, she was just paying me back. And she got me because I start blushing, because I'm a bad blusher. So I'm blushing with my face looking at her, and I won't look back at all my guys, because when I blush, I get teary-eyed. I mean, I'm almost crying. So I won't look back at my guys because I'm blushing so bad. But as I'm just looking at her going, you got me, you got me. My one Aryan screams out, hey, Frank, because he wants to show off to me. Hey, Frank, how about that? When the master race takes over, she's going to get shot twice. She's black and she's gay. Now, let's go over this one thing real quick we used to hear in the movement all the time, which is still said in a lot of movements today. When the master race takes over, blah, blah, blah is going to happen. It's never anything like, ooh, when the master race takes over, we're going to have petunias and baby bunnies. It's always something really bad after those words are said. So when he says, yo, the master race takes over, he's going to get shot twice, he's black and he's gay, that snapped me back into it. I was like, and I turned, I was like, no, guys, no, that's good. And they were all, didn't get, like, what are you talking about? Ooh, are you down with that? You know, and I was like, no, guys, if he's black and he's gay, he's not going to be with a woman. He's not going to reproduce his race. You get it? And that's how they all were. They were all like, whoa, that was the deepest thing they'd ever heard. Like, that's some deep stuff right there. Like, you have reasons to hate. Like, you're on it, you know? And from that day on, I was the most intelligent racist they'd ever met. So look, throughout my prison time, G and a couple other black kids I was up in the county jail with, they start coming to the same prison I'm in. And I was cool with them. And a lot of Aryans, and there's no gang war at my time, there's no race war going on, and it's not like American History X here. This is like real, and like we deal drugs with each other. We deal liquor and alcohol and food with each other all day long. We're always conversating and interacting with one another. As long as there's no gang war or race war going on, the guards are our enemy, not each other. Like we rather want to get over on each other, but it's life in there, right? And you can't have constant wars. So, because you need some peace. Because if you don't have peace, you're on lockdown. So, G and some of those other guys, they used to play cards. I go play cards with them. I used to go play basketball with the Aryans, because some days the basketball yard would be ours. Now, all my guys in my crew are all bikers from southern and central Illinois. They don't dribble basketballs. They don't. Look, they don't know how to cradle a football. They know how to fix your transmission. And they're good at it. And that's their jobs. And, they're metalheads and gearheads. So when I would play basketball with them, it wasn't fun. That's not fun. I'm very competitive, and I'm very athletic. So when I would play basketball with guys who just throw bricks up all day, it's not fun. Or when they would play football, they would just run like big ogres, not know how to cradle a ball. And so I just pop the ball out from behind and go get it. And I talk tons of trash, because I'm a Philly kid, so I talk tons of trash. And those guys got sick of me playing ball with them. So sometimes when the black kids would play, who I knew some of them, and it was a neutral day in the yard, they'd just be like, all right. I'd be like, yo, let me play with y'all. Now, G and Jello and Tony were these black kids I knew, and they would be like, all right, you can come and play. First job they give me, kickoff returns, knowing there's going to be a lot of missed assignments on that play. I'm going to get my head ripped off, and I'm going to quit. Like every other white boy who came along and said, I'm good. But I am that good. I'm good. I'm fast, guys. And when I'm scared, I'm even faster. You know what I mean? And I could put spin. Anyway, played football with those guys. Here's one thing I want to tell you guys, and this is some of the things that started to awaken me. I kidnapped another human being, and I got 3 years in prison. G, Tony, Jello, those kids sold drugs and got 15, 20. So when those black activists used to say to me, you have it easier because you're white, and I said, no, it kept ringing in my head. It was like a seed. It was like, yeah, those were good kids. They were really good kids. G was one of the most funniest people you ever will meet. He was just so funny. His outlook on life was amazing. He got like 15 years, 16, he had 16 years when he got sent up. No violence. I'm sticking guns in people's faces. And I got 3. There's one difference, y'all. One factual difference in what was going on there. So I started to say, okay, some things people are saying were right, but I'm not changing like you would think. I wasn't going around saying, all right, guys, let's kumbaya here. You know what I mean? I was still a neo-Nazi. I'm still going to do what I got to do. And I still hung out with my neo-Nazi guys every day. We still did all of our stuff together. I mean, that's just what you do. It's your gang, it's your family. And again, I didn't have much to talk with bikers. But I loved when I sat around with G and Jello and those guys that grew up in Chicago, because I grew up in Philly, and we both had L trains, and we talk about the L train, we talk about this and that, and laugh, and being about on welfare. And I mean, I remember growing up on welfare and having food coupons, like food stamps. They're really called food coupons, but I remember growing up on food stamps. And we used to laugh about that stuff. It made me laugh. So anyway, I'm getting released from prison. When I get released from prison, I'm going to go right back to being a neo-Nazi. I never changed. I didn't change. I'm going to get out, I'm going to go right back to my crew, I'm going to do everything I was doing. So I go back, and I get out of prison, and I go back to Philly. And when I'm back in Philly, my crew has gotten bigger. My ego is even bigger. I just got out of prison for kidnapping an Antifa person, which is like our rival again. So I show up, and now these new guys look at me like a legend. Like a legend. And that was my ego. You stoke my ego, I'm with you. So hanging out with a lot of these guys, I remember the young guys would come around, and I remember they would say things just like, oh, black people, ooh. And I remember just having glimpses of times going, that's not true. And actually, you sound really dumb. And then I would think, you know what? I used to say what you just said when I first came around, and I thought I was funny and brilliant too, so I get it. But when you come home from a prison with a swastika on your neck, you have tattoos all over your head, and have an aggravated kidnapping already on my record, and you fill out a job application? These ain't good people skills. They're not like, oh, swastika, management. You know what I mean? He's gonna be boss. No, they don't hire you. And a buddy of mine came to me and said, I can get you a job working at an antique show in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, carrying out furniture at the Cherry Hill, New Jersey mall at the antique show. Would you take the job? It's $100 a day. I was like, this is 1993, 94. It was 94 going in, yeah, 94. 94 going into 95. Anyway, I said, yeah, I'll take that job. And as soon as I said it, my buddy, who was a neo-Nazi at the time too, but whatever, he says, I can get the job. And I said, okay. And then he goes, but I got to tell you, the dude that runs the company is a Jew. Do you still want the job? And I was like, yeah. I mean, I don't have to talk to this guy, do I? And my buddy goes, no. And I said, did you tell him about, again, I'm showing up with a swastika on my neck, right? I said, did you tell him about me? And my buddy goes, yeah, I told him all about you. I said, well, what did he say? And excuse my language, Hashem, but I'm only quoting Keith here. He goes, Keith said he doesn't give a rat's ass what you believe, just don't break his furniture. And I showed up and I started working for this man. And I'm working for him, and as I'm working for him for that weekend, he's kind man. We were both big Philadelphia Flyers fans, so anytime we had that awkward moment around each other, we'd be like, hey, how about them draft picks? Yeah, how about them draft picks, you know? But at the end of the time, I did something that some of us all do. Unless you're so spiritual, you might just float out of here. But you ever have like that resentment at someone at work where you're like, you know what, I'm done with that person. And if they say that one more dumb thing again, I'm probably going to confront them. And you plan the whole argument out in your head as you're driving to work, like, oh, I got him. He says this, I'm going to say that. Like a good resentment, you know? Sometimes they feel good, you know? Like practicing that argument, like, I'm going to tell this person off. Well, I did that with Keith, where I thought he was not going to pay me my money. He was going to Jew me. So I show up. I made $600 in tips. So I think he knows that. He's not going to give me any more money. He's going to say, you got your money. That's what I'm thinking. That's the argument I got. So he comes up to me at the end of the night, Sunday night, last night, and he's like, hey, I owe you money. And I'm already like, yeah, you do. He said, how much do I owe you? I said, 300, waiting for him to say something different. He said, oh, yeah, 300. Here you go. 1, 2, here's 3. You know what? Here's an extra $100. You're a really good worker. And all I thought in my head was, you son of a gun, you ruined it. I put out all these landmines for us to argue and fight and prove me right, and you didn't step on one. And then he says, hey, can I give you a ride back over to South Philly? I said, sure. And he gave me a ride back into my neighborhood that night because it was late. And as he's giving me a ride, he says, hey, what do you do for a living? And my swastika is blazing at him. So I said, I don't do anything. And he said, why don't you come work for me? And Keith gave me a full-time job. And he taught me all about the business. And he used to come pick me up. He had a bunch of different employees. He had come with storefronts. But on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays was the day we would go pick up furniture and bring it back to the warehouse, get it refinished, and get it into the storefronts by Friday or Saturday. And a lot of days he would just pick me. He'd be like, come on, let's go. Come with me, Frank. And it's the same time as the O.J. Simpson trial. So DNA, we listen to news radio all the time. When you're driving through New Jersey, you got nothing to do but talk. You know what I mean? It's Jersey, right? Turnpike's not that great. And we would just talk all the time. And then no matter how hardcore I want to think I am, I'm still a neo-Nazi working. I'm showing up with Keith with my boots on, my shaved head, and I'm showing up every day, you know. Keith don't care. And Keith is Jewish. He's not religiously Jewish, but he says oy vey all the time. He did. He was like, oy vey, what do you do to my furniture? What'd you do? Hey. And we would just always have these talks. But when I would break something, no matter how cool and tough I think I am, deep down inside, I'm broken, and I think I'm dumb. I was told I was only going to be a ditch digger. That was what my stepdad used to say all the time. You know, who cares if you do good at school? You're just going to be a ditch digger anyway, right? So I would break something, and one day I broke something in front of Keith, and I was like, yo, Keith, I'm so sorry. I'm so stupid. I'm so sorry. I'm so stupid. And he just came over to me and said, he said, stop saying you're stupid, you idiot. Let's go. Clean it up and let's go. And I cleaned up the little mess. I did whatever. I think I broke. It was like a little marble top table thing. And got in the truck and we're driving through Jersey. And we're just talking. And I was very embarrassed and ashamed and thought he was going to take pay out of my paycheck, which he had every right because he paid us cash on Friday. And it was Friday, so I'm just embarrassed and he was just giving me this pep talk about how smart I am. And how the way he loves hanging out with me, and he loves the way I talk about things, and his key words. And This is what I took from the conversation at the time, and is he just looked at me and said, Frank, smart people can fake being dumb, but dumb people can't fake being smart. You're just smart, Frank. Get over it. You know? And that's the day, guys. He goes to go drop me off, and he gives me my full pay. And he goes, yo, I'll see you on Monday. Not fired, not in trouble. So I'll see you on Monday. And I had about a 2-mile walk from that car to the truck to my mom's house and through my neighborhood. And as this longest walk of my life, where I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Like, I'd already come to conclusions on the black and Latino issue. I did, because I was in time with these people. They're good people. I grew up around black people, really. You know what I mean? I just was rebelled, and so, these things were coming back to me. Like, what are you doing? And it was like, this is just one more thing that Hashem is putting in my life to be like, who are you to judge? Who are you? And I just started saying, when I get back to my mom's neighborhood, and I get back to my mom's, because I was living back in my mom's after prison, I was like, I'm just gonna. People like telling me racist things because I was a racist. People like telling me racist jokes because I was a racist. And I was like, what am I going to say when they say these things to me now? I'm going to start telling them that I'm not a neo-Nazi anymore. I was like, I kept thinking, but I got a swastika on my neck. Like, what am I going to do? But I was like, I'm just going to tell them no. And I started to have this change. So real quick, because we got to fast forward some stuff, because we'll be here too late, and I don't want this group complaining. I love you all, but we can do that. Real quick, I went to the FBI after the Oklahoma City bombing, and then the FBI pointed me in the direction of the Anti-Defamation League and some other civil rights groups, and were like, hey, why don't you go talk with these groups? Because I wasn't giving the FBI anything, but they wanted to hear anything, because the federal building was just blowing up by people like me. By people like me. So, and I didn't know Timothy McVeigh. Before they caught Timothy McVeigh, I thought I was going to know who did the bombing. I promise, I did. There's friends of mine who all said the day I watched that bombing, I was like, I'm going to know who did this. Because I was completely out of the movement by then. So anyway, I was doing a bunch of work. I started working for the Philadelphia Flyers, started building inner city hockey programs, getting black kids to play with white kids, because that's how I started to change in prison. So the Flyers gave me a job. Now I'm a Philly kid. It's like a New Yorker working for the Yankees, in my neighborhood where I grew up. I'm working for Flyers, like what a blessing, right? So things were going well. I wound up getting married. I moved to Iowa. I started working for some other professional hockey teams in their farm divisions. Like, really? But I had this disease of addiction and alcoholism, and I kept relapsing. I would get 1 year sober and relapse, get 2 years sober, relapse. And in that time, I also did a bunch of other amazing things. I started a group called Life After Hate, which a bunch of other former white supremacists started reaching out to others and doing interventions. And I was doing these interventions all over the country and around the world, actually, doing interventions on people, getting them out of the movement. Doing that, working in professional hockey, speaking all over the world, becoming like this expert in this field. And anyway, in that time, about 2014, I wrote a book in 2010. I'm not here to sell my book. I try not to do that because there's enough grifters on this planet right now that I don't need to grift, and I don't like grifting, so I don't need to sell that. But I wrote a book, and it did really well, and I worked with Steven Spielberg on some stuff, and again, so I was doing all this amazing stuff. But I was doing this little documentary project, and in Des Moines, Iowa, there was a Chabad rabbi had a little diner by my house called Maccabee's Deli. And so I used to go eat there, and he was a fan of my book. And we became friends. And so, I was like, hey, will you do this documentary with me? And this Chabad rabbi goes, sure, I'll do a documentary with you. And then he goes to say, hey, are you going to tell the world that you're Jewish? Right? And I was like, I'm not Jewish. And he's like, well, you should check out your last name. Meeink. Meeink isn't Jewish, by the way. This is just him reaching. So, are you Jewish? Right? I said, Chabad, right? Are you Jewish? You know? So anyway, I wrote out on social media. I said, hey, this rabbi keeps saying that I'm Jewish and it might be my last name. So then my family starts chiming in. And my uncles are like, hey, yeah, we are, right? But not because of the name. Now, I got to tell you that when I was 14 years old, the same uncle who's chiming in on this Facebook post is an uncle who I never got along with. He's just an uncle. Me and my cousins never liked him. We avoided him like the plague. not a guy we liked, and whatever. It's just the truth. So he took me out to dinner when I first became a neo-Nazi, and he was giving me this life pep talk about if I want to join something like this, I want to join a gang, you join the military. He's a lifelong Navy guy, 30-year Navy guy. So he's like, you want to join the military? You want to join a gang? You join the military. That's a real gang. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm already down for what I'm down for. This is when I was 14. And then at the end of this conversation, I'd seen from what I remember he's seen I wasn't buying any of this. And so at the end of the conversation, we're finishing up eating, he goes, oh, and by the way, you can't be a neo-Nazi, we're Jewish. And I would never believed him. I thought, because what else was he going to say? We're black? You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't going to believe that. So he's like, you're Jewish. So anyway, he writes out on this Facebook post, I told you this when you were 14, that we were Jewish, and now it takes his rabbi to say, but we are. And he started talking about my great-grandmama Elizabeth Zellman, and about our family, and it's on my mom's side, and it's my mom's 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 mom, so I'm in, like you just can't get rid of me. I'm in, y'all. You're stuck with me now, because it's mom stuff here. And so I start to accept that. I'm going to fast forward this a little bit more, but the Jewish stuff gets so good. It's so amazing. Anyway, I wound up getting a divorce in 2019. Some really traumatic things happened. My son dies in a car accident. My mom dies of a fentanyl overdose. Like, just a chain of things just happened in my life. And at the time, I was in the middle of a divorce, which was the horrendous divorce. You know, my careers were gone. I relapsed again. It's 2018, 2019. So I started dating a girl. Poor woman, right? I'm insane at the time. I'm in the middle of this crazy divorce. And I was like, oh, I'm going to find a Jewish girl. And there was only 2 in all of Des Moines, Iowa. And I found the one, you know what I mean? And I think she was Chicago transplant, really. But I found this one girl. We started talking. I said, yeah, I'm Jewish. I'm trying to discover some of this stuff. She's like, I'm Jewish, too. And so we started dating. And anyway, I left her house one day in the middle of this divorce. I was driving to a buddy's house where I was living at the time. And I just got to tell you this moment, guys, is as I was driving, the whole world crashed in on me. As I'm driving, I'm thinking about the divorce. I'm thinking about my children. I'm just thinking about relapsing. I'm thinking about and for the first time in my whole life, with all the relapses and all the treatments and all the stuff, for the first time in my life, I was like, this is all me. Not that my son died. My son died in a separate, but I didn't know how to handle it. I had no spiritual defense. Made it all about me. Made it all about me. That's what I did, make everything about me. And so this all just crashed in. So I pulled over to the side of the road, guys, and I started crying and screaming up at God, saying, please, God. I was asking him to kill me. Because I wasn't going to commit suicide, because I know that just passes the pain to my children. And I love my children, but I was like, just please kill me in some type of crazy way so that I didn't kill myself. I'm going to drive out of this car, let a Mack truck hit me, let a telephone pole fall on me. Please kill me. I can't take this pain anymore. And as I was doing that, my phone rings, and it's the girl I'm dating. And I pick up the phone, and I'm like, what do you want? And she's screaming, crying. And she says, I'm like, so now I'm like, oh my God, what's going on, you know? And she says, get back to my house. My sister just killed herself. Why I'm screaming to God to please kill me. And when I hung up the phone, I said, okay, yeah, I'll come right back over. I hung up the phone, and this is my story, y'all, and this happened. This voice came in my car, and it just said, get to California, I have work for you. That's all this voice said, and I just answered the voice, and I said, okay, that's it. And I drove over to her home. There was a man, I lived out in LA for a while, doing a TV show in 2010. Once my book came out, you know, these TV people were like, hey, we're going to do a TV show about you doing interventions on neo-Nazis. And that show is on YouTube, if you ever want to watch it. Anyway, while I was living out here, I was in and out of the program, but I was going to recovery. And I was at these meeting spots of recovery, and while I was at a meeting one day, I met a guy who I kind of knew, and we were talking, and this other older gentleman came over to me, an older Jewish gentleman came over to me, and he said these words to me. He goes, a fellow Heb at a meeting. This is before I knew I was Jewish. This is 2010. So when he says a fellow Heb at a meeting, I looked at him, I was like, I'm not Jewish. I'm actually I'm a former neo-Nazi. I'm doing a TV show about being a former neo-Nazi. What are you talking about? And he's like, well, you look like a Heb to me. He's an old Jew, you know. He's like, you look like a Heb to me. And he walked away. Me and that man, for whatever reason, stayed in touch for over 10 years. Like because I was at meetings with him off and on throughout that summer I lived here, and I just got to know him. He's a great guy, and he was very, very in tune with the program. And we just sporadically throughout the years, we would talk. And when the voice said, "Get to California, I work for you," he popped in my head. So I called him and I said, I need you. I need you to sponsor me and become my recovering rabbi. I can't do this anymore. And he said, "Get out here." And that's the reason why I moved out here. It's just to be with that guy. And I'm still with him to this day. Every morning I talk to that man, every morning. And he walks people to God through the 12 steps. And he's amazing at it. And so anyway, when I got out here, I'll speed this up, the pandemic hits right when I move out here. Like 2 months into it, the pandemic, bam, hits. And I'm stuck in a MacArthur Park, an apartment in MacArthur Park, getting sober. We're the biggest drug den in this whole city. But I'm there and I'm staying sober, and it's a pandemic. And then some things happen. May 25th, anniversary's coming up, if anyone remembers. May 25th is the day that George Floyd was killed. So that happens. When I was a neo-Nazi, I used to be always asked to become a cop. And I'm not gonna sit here and bash cops and all that, but this is true stuff. They used to talk to us about becoming cops. And since I used to have the swastika on my neck, I heard it a little bit more than others, because guys used to say, "Hey man, you're smart, man. You know what, but we need you to become cops and get in the military. And you can't do it with that swastika on your neck." But a bunch of my guys became cops. And so I have been very much against mass incarceration, and when all this stuff was happening, I started partaking in some of the protesting and very active in that. But then the government calls, AOC, Jamie Raskin. They're like, "Hey, we heard you know some neo-Nazis that became cops. Would you come testify in front of Congress about it?" And I was like, for the first time, I was like, because probably before I would have said no, because I knew that this was going to be pretty bad. But I was like, yeah, let's do it. I went and I testified in front of Congress, a congressional hearing on white supremacists infiltrating policing, and gave names, names. Not just, oh, hypothetically, they're kind of mean sometimes. No, like these guys were full-on neo-Nazis wanting a race war and now pull black people over. Yeah. So I testified about it, and then they threatened to kill me. Not the neo-Nazis. So I had to go live and hide on a boat over here, right over here. If you guys ever go to the Chowder Barge, anyone know of the Chowder Barge? It's a cool little restaurant right over here in Wilmington. Yeah, and that's a cool little spot. You should go check it out. They have some, nothing's kosher. If you eat kosher, I eat kosher. So, anyway, got some good stuff. They got fish and chips. We'll make it work, right? Anyhow, I got a boat and I lived in that marina. And if you go by that marina, that's where boats go to die. And I lived there, and I hid out there for 2 years. And while I hid out there, I said, I want to get serious about my recovery and stay serious about my recovery. I'm living on a boat. I have Wi-Fi on my boat. It's awesome. I pay $420 a month for rent in Los Angeles. Awesome. With water and electric to my boat. It was cool. And I said, I want to get serious about my Judaism. So while I was hiding out, every faction of Judaism came into my life. So I reached out to the closest temple to where I was at was Temple Bethel over in San Pedro. So I wrote the rabbi over there and said, hey, here's a little bit about who I am. I am Jewish. I'm trying to study more. And she wrote me back. Her name's Rabbi Cassie, if anyone knows her. She's amazing. She actually performed our wedding. She writes me back and says, sure. And now it's during the midst of the pandemic, so nobody's meeting in person. So I'm like, perfect, because nobody wants to meet me, you know? And she said, everything's on Zoom. Just come to our Torah studies, come to this. They had a Musar class, and I was like, all right. So, and then a bunch of my Chabad friends, because I've always stayed close with, I have a very fond point in me for Chabad. Look, if Mars is ever colonized, the first two things that are going to be there is a Chabad house and an AA meeting, right? That's the truth. That's the truth. Chabad number 1 will be up there. Mars 1, right? Lubavitcher. And an AA meeting. That'll be the first two things there, I swear to you. But anyway, I have a very fond. So they came down and they taught me about wrapping tefillin on my boat while I was hiding from the police. or not police, I was hiding from people that wanted to do me harm. And they came down and they put a little mezuzah on my boat. You know, I was set. And then I had my my conservative family down in San Diego. I have like a Jewish mother down there who I've known throughout my activist years, who used to say the same thing. She's like, I always knew you were Jewish. And so they started like helping out, and they're like, you know, what do you need? Do you need this? And I, you know, again, start rapping to filling. And for me, rapping to filling, you do you. I don't ever try to preach, but you do you. I love rapping to filling every morning. It is for me. It's like putting spiritual jumper cables on in the morning. It like gets my battery going. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, okay. So anyway, I just got very serious about practicing Judaism, and in that time of living on my boat, I started to learn about King David, and that's like my guy. And I'm just like learning more and more about him, and it's like, oh, he's hiding out in caves. I'm like, I'm hiding out on a boat. Okay. You stand up for people. Okay, I could do that. Be human. It's okay to be human. Okay. And I got really serious about my studies and studying recovery, studying Judaism, and studying activism. Real studying about activism. I watched thousands of hours of police depositions because it's the one spot where they could be a little bit honest. Now, I'm not going to talk bad about policing, but I'm going to talk about my activism right now. Just so you know, these aren't myths and suspicions. These are real facts. We are only America, not Jews. America is 5% of the world population, where half of that is women and half is men. Women are a little bit more than we are because men do dumb things, so that we die a little bit quicker sometimes, you know what I mean? So there's a little bit more women than there are men. So maybe 2.6% of the women's world population here. But we're 30% of the world's women's prison population. 30% of the world's women's prison population. And per capita, if he goes by per capita and not by people, because obviously people, LA, California and New York have more, but if you go by per capita of people, it's Oklahoma, it's Kentucky, it's Arkansas. And if you look at per capita of women in prison and you look at their education, it goes just like this. It goes, you know, Oklahoma's first, and they're bottom of the education. Then Alabama, then Arkansas. And you could see by the education. See, because I learned, when I always thought there was the conspiracy with Jewish people. I thought there was a big conspiracy. Why are they so successful? Big conspiracy. And then I found out what the conspiracy was. Education. It's about education. And that's why on my boat, I was like, I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to learn so that I just don't go around and go, all cops are bad. That's not right. That doesn't fix this problem. But what will fix this problem, and I hope that you guys take some of this with you, it's the traffic stops in America. You know there's 50,000 traffic stops a day in America. More than half of them are against people of color, and especially the poor. You didn't use your blinker. Now get out of the car. And then they pull people out of their cars. Now imagine knowing that I know, and there's now been investigations into this, and we've found hundreds of full-on white supremacists that are police. Again, police aren't all bad. I'm not trying to say that. They're not the bad guys that people I know think they are, but they're not the good guys they think they are. We have mass incarceration because of their unions and lobbyists. I promise you, when you look deeper and not give it an excuse of, oh, no, it's a machine. It is a ravenous machine, and it starts with the traffic stops in America. And now that I said that to you, you just watch over the next 5 years, 4 years, give it whatever. Start watching when you watch the news and you hear of a new case of police brutality or this happened, and you go, and then it started at a traffic stop. Started at a traffic stop. It became a business. It became a business. And there's things now like drunk drivings, and I'm sorry to get off on this, but I've studied and restudied this. Drunk drivings in America, horrible. We should have, it's bad. But there's thousands of false drunk driving people pulled over all the time. Thousands of them. Because it's not about the arrest and then the conviction. It's only about the arrest because later on the unions go to the city and say, look how many drunk driving arrests we had. Even though if you followed the case along, there maybe 30% of them get thrown out because they weren't drunk. But it's about the police presenting, this is how many arrests we had. And so they get more funding. And it keeps this machine rolling, because when you have a drunk driving on your record, even if you aren't convicted, it's on your police arrest jacket and anyone can find it. It's never wiped off, guys. Your cases are never wiped off. There's an arrest jacket that everyone has. So, it's about activism. We're not going to get there right now, y'all. There's not going to be a change in policing right now. Not with the way things are going, with the administration. I'm not going to get too, I'm not going to talk about a news network that's named after an animal. It's really bad for our country. I'm not going to bring that up. I'm not going to bring up the animal one. But we're not going to change that right now. Okay? We're not going to change that right now, but we're going to set in motion and set things in place for when this pendulum swings back after this. And then we got to get in there and start changing things and stand with each other. And I know right now there's people in this room and people I've talked with and people I love very much who are like, well, wait, we stood up for Black Lives Matter and now they're not standing up with us. I got yous. I get it. Sometimes it's not about that. One of the things that made me fall in love with Judaism is that when you look back over our history, in this country, in America, the historical black colleges, funded by who? Us. The NAACP, funded by who? Us. Who marched with Martin Luther King? We can't lose it. You know what? Let me tell you a cool, cute, funny story that I believe the way my family met. It's a story I'm telling myself anyway. I'm going to make this up. But corned beef and cabbage for Irish people on St. Patrick's Day, right? It's an Irish meal. It's a big thing. Corned beef and cabbage. It's not an Irish meal, y'all. They ate pork and cabbage when they came over. And when I started to learn about how we integrated with each other, and when the Irish came over here and everyone hated them. In Philadelphia, you had horrible they had the Catholic riots where they killed hundreds of Catholics. Look about it, in the 1800s. Because people did not want the Irish coming over here with their Catholic, because they weren't going to assimilate. They were all going to live in ghettos. They weren't going to do this. Same things we hear right now about other groups of people. And when they were here and they were starving, because there was no welfare system, there was no feeding. They were starving and they were running out of meat. So the Jewish butchers, because the Irish moved in on the Jewish neighborhoods, it was the Jewish butchers that gave them the cheapest meat they can give them, which was corned beef. And it became an Irish-American tradition. So every St. Patrick's Day, when the Irish are eating that, we should be like, yo, we fed you that. We gave you that. But we can't, because we have to stay humble. And we didn't do it. Hashem did it through us. I'm a huge believer in God, and I'm going to stop talking now because I could talk forever. But I know God is real, and that's okay if you don't. I don't need to force that on any of you. I'm not that type of thing. The only part between me and you, if you don't believe or don't believe or do believe, I don't care. That's on you. Is that the only part that comes out between me and you and me knowing that Hashem is real is how do I treat you? Do I treat you as a child of God? That's it. And that's every human being I come into contact with, especially drug addicts who are alcoholics who I deal with mostly in my life. So anyway, I do a God walk every morning, or as best I can every morning. And when I do my God walk, I have a saying. See, because I don't know about you, but again, I have alcoholism. I've been now sober for a good bit, 6.5 years sober now. Work a very good program. But when I walk, and for an hour, and again, unless you're so spiritual, you'll float out here. Give me an hour, and I start thinking about people. And I start thinking about, why didn't Johnny text me back yesterday? You know what? F Johnny. You know what? And I start going on this big roll about how I really didn't like Johnny anyway because he didn't text me back when he said he was going to text me back. Because I only think about myself sometimes. It's part of the alcoholism. So what I do is when those type of intrusive thoughts come in my head, I use the word stay. And this is my word that Hashem gave me on the beach one day. You can use it. You can have it. It's not trademarked. You can do whatever you want with it. But S-T-A-Y, stop thinking about yourself. And that's what I say all day to myself. How can I be of service, right? When I wake up and I say the prayer, God, thank you for returning my soul to me today. So I could be of service to you and all your children. That's my day. That's my life. This is my God that I have come to find in Judaism to be of service. So thank you all for allowing me to share my story with you all. So we're going to do questions. Rabbi, I know we went over on time. I'm sorry. Oh, we have some questions. Yeah. I think we have a question right here.
Yeah, so we are aware of the time. Let's do about 10 minutes or so of
Sure,
questions so we
sure.
can be done by 9:30, and then luckily we're so fortunate Frank is part of this community. So come on any Saturday
At
morning.
tour
right?
studies.
Any
Come
Saturday
to tour
morning.
studies. If not, you go to
Come
hell.
tomorrow morning.
No, that's my old Catholic. I'm just kidding. I'm just playing. I don't say that.
Frank, I know this. I know the answer to.
Yeah.
Oh, I know the answer to this, but I'm
Okay.
wondering if very, very briefly you can say what happened to your swastika.
What happened to my swastika? Oh, good question. So swastika was I was working for the Philadelphia Flyers, doing good stuff, and a newspaper in Philly came and did a story about me. This is 1995, going into '96. This reporter came and was like, "The Philadelphia Flyers gave a job to a guy with a swastika on his neck, and you're coaching black kids." And they're like, "Isn't that a little awkward?" And I was like, "Well, they listen." So. So he wrote about that in the article, and this is a part in this story where, and goes on to being some Hollywoody type stuff, is in the article, in this article I said, I look in the mirror a lot and I cover the tattoo with my hand to see what I look like without it now. And he wrote that in the article, that's what I do. And this woman from University of Pennsylvania got a hold of me and said, "Hey, would you come talk to us at the hospital, University of Penn, it's Ivy League, big deal." So I go up to their hospital, and the woman brings me in and says, "Hey, we'd like to take that tattoo off your neck." And I'm like, "I have no money. Like, I'm a hockey coach, I have nothing." And she was like, "Well, I'm offended because, in fact, you can't afford me. I'm the best in the world at dermatology. And that's why I teach here at University of Pennsylvania Hospital. I teach the other doctors about these new lasers." These were like new. They were like the bigger metal arm ones. Anyhow, get over the whole story is, she said, "How about if you let the resident doctors who've never shot a live person, they've only shot cadavers, will you be a live person under a laser? Would you be the first one?" And I was like, "Let's do it. Like, as long as you can use a belt sander, as long as we're in a hospital, let's do it." And anyway, and she was amazing. And then after my 8 treatments, it went away, and I went in, I gave her like a thank you, and she said, "There was no need to thank me. My family died in the Holocaust." So, that was it. So, all right, what do we got? Any other ones? Any other questions?
Other questions?
Oh, shit,
All right, coming over.
crap. I'll be over there.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for being here and sharing your story. It was truly remarkable to hear what you had to say, so thank you. My question is, did the Jewish man who hired you to move the furniture ever have a conversation with you about where you came from and what you were all about? Or was that just a taboo and the elephant in the room between you and him?
Okay, so me and Keith, no, we talked about my beliefs all the time. We talked about beliefs all the time. We would drive through West Philly, and there'd be times where I'd be like, "Oh, see, this is," and he'd be like, "Well, there's other ways and things." So we used to talk, it was during the O.J. Simpson trial, so we used to debate about race and racism and stuff like that, I remember amazing things. I remember one time Keith said, "Well, that's like when the Jews were poor in America." And of course, being ignorant, I was like, "What are you talking about? When were the Jews ever poor?" And he goes, "Frank, all you have to do is look at lightweight boxing and who were the champs. And if you look back at lightweight boxing champs, you'll see who were the poorest people." And it was the Italians, then it was the Jews, then it was the Irish, and then it was the Puerto Rican. And you can tell by lightweight boxing who were the poorest people in America. And he told me stuff like that. And I remember that being a sports guy, that kind of blew my mind. I was like, wow. So, no, we talked I had a swastika on my neck. I talked about my beliefs. There were times when he would drop me off at work when I was still full on in the neo-Nazis. And I would go hang out with my neo-Nazi friends after he dropped me off. And I remember I would go there and people would talk about, "I'll put a bullet in the Jew's head," and I would sit there and there was times, I remember these times thinking, if they tried that with Keith, I would jump in front of that bullet because I just started to love the man, So we had conversations, and me and Keith are still close to this day and pretty tight, so.
You know me, for the last, this is a little bit of a different question.
Sure.
So I'm a lot older than you. My father's entire family's from South Philly. My mom's entire family's from West Philly. We knew Paul Robeson. My family was very involved in the socialist movement back then. I taught at Benjamin Franklin High School. I went to Temple University. I drink water. So my dad was a lightweight boxer.
Okay.
So tick, tick, tick,
Yeah,
tick,
yeah.
tick. Okay, so my question is Pat's or Gino's?
Okay. Let me answer in the good Jewish way. Neither, because I don't eat meat and cheese together anymore. So I stepped out of that one. Audible. But no, back home, I would only eat neighborhood things. So Jim's, Michael's, Tony Luke's, those were all the guys in my neighborhood that I would eat at their spots, so. Yeah, they're Philly cheesesteak. Yeah, they're all cheesesteak restaurants, cheesesteaks. Yeah.
I have a question for you, Frank. You lost one son. How did it impact your faith?
How do I?
How did it impact your faith?
Oh, so I had no faith. When my son died, I had no faith at all. I had no faith. It was one of the things that cracked me, is that I never, see today in my life, I go through a lot. I'm very active in activism. I'm always helping other men in the program and I just do a lot. And I have an amazing wife and we go through whatever. But there's times where I love to say to Hashem, I'm going to lean on you right now. I do it all the time. I'm going to lean on you. And back then I didn't have that. I didn't have that. And today I'm so blessed to have that spiritual defense that I use a lot in my life. And the God I have, and I don't mean that, again, I don't try to blast anything or put anything different than what you might think, but the God I have today doesn't care what I call him. He just cares that I call him. And he doesn't even care if I call it a him or she. My God's not that petty. He don't care. He's like, I just want to talk to you. And I want to guide you. And I have amazing men in my life, especially my recovering rabbi, who puts me in my place a lot. And says, this is your self-centeredness and your ego, and it's coming out right now. And, you know, one of the things I'll shut up about this, because I'll talk forever about everything, is I learned through Judaism and through recovery. By the way, if any of you guys are interested in recovery, or if you know anyone interested in recovery, but you want to stay true to Judaism, this book right here is written by Rabbi Shais Tab. He is amazing. And this book is the Jewish thought on the 12 steps of recovery. So this is an amazing book right here, if you ever need to grab it. And this book right here is this is like my Torah. I mean, it's like my Talmud. It's got all these notes. I mean, this is my book. This is the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So not publicly putting myself out there, but it's already out there. Everyone knows. So the thing I just wanted to say is that I got to learn about humility through Judaism and through my recovery. And I listened to like all these tapes of like Rabbi YY and some bunch of Chabad guys, and they have a bunch of tapes on YouTube. And I remember when I lived on my boat, I used to listen because I was like, I got to get this thing of humility because I'm so humble, let me tell you all about it. You know, that type of humbleness. And I didn't want that humbleness. Then I started to learn about humility, and I learned about all these amazing things about humility and how much it really means to have that open up these books and open the Torah for me. But one of the main key things, and this is kind of stupid, but it's funny, is I could just shut up sometimes. All right? Like right now I'm speaking, but if we were out to dinner, I don't need to make everything about me all the time. And I used to be that guy. So if I just shut my mouth sometimes, it's really humbling, but it's also I allow to not always talk about myself because that's part of the alcoholism. So go ahead, you have a question? Final question.
Yes, you mentioned earlier when you were in San Pedro and hiding out, there was concern for your safety. Do you still feel a concern today for your safety?
I don't. I've given that up. I can't live with worry in my life. That's not what Hashem wants me to do. He wants me to go out and be his person I am and be the activist that I am, and I just don't. And destroy the plans of those who seek to do me harm, speedily defeat their aims and their purpose for the sake of his honor, your power, you know, your holiness, and your Torah. And so I travel. I keep that part. That's a prayer that I keep with me all the time. And I'm not I live a big, beautiful life. I married an amazing woman, and I go to school, and I'm not going to stop, because what I'm talking about with the traffic stops and all that, we're eventually going to get there, y'all. It might take us 10 years, but eventually we're going to say, what are we doing with mass incarceration when we have the Bill of Rights? So I'm going to be a person that's going to keep talking about it, no matter what they do to me. And if they do kill me, it's going to happen even faster, so don't do nothing to me. So. Thank you all.
Frank, thank you so much for sharing your story this evening and
Thank
for
you,
being
guys.
part of this community. We're so grateful to have you and Allison here, and we look forward to a continued journey with you for many years to come. Thank you all for being here tonight. Shabbat Shalom. Please
Shabbat
join us
Shalom.
for some delicious treats out there. Are we saying motzi still? Okay, and motzi. It's not never too late for the motzi.
Some of these stories I've heard in tour studies, and some of them, it's up for another time. It's deeply inspiring. I really hear your words, to say nothing of my hope of you being in this community where, as a part of that saying, meaning of Hashem Elohim, as a part of that, you know that this is a part of that support. Anyway, deeply, deeply inspiring.
Might be tomorrow at first.
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Are you down in San Diego? No, I live in Minnesota. Oh, okay. Okay.
My grandmother lived many, many good years. But
Excuse me just a second. I used to like you. I love you. Just want you to know that. Just want you to know that. Sorry.
thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow at tour studies.
Maybe,
Not
maybe
here.
not.
Sorry.